They say red meat is bad for you, bad for your heart, bad for your waistline, even bad for your lifespan. But have you ever wondered why these claims keep popping up, even when they don't hold up under real scrutiny? Because they lied to you. In 2025, the myths surrounding red meat and the carnivore diet are stronger than ever, fueled by a mix of outdated studies, biased research, and a lot of misinformation that leaves people confused and misled about their own health. Discover right now 11 big lies about red meat they want you to believe. When it comes to the carnivore diet and its supposed link to cancer, there's a lot of misinformation swirling around. Many claims connecting red meat to cancer risk actually stem from weak observational studies, lacking the depth to show a real cause and effect relationship. These studies tend to observe people who eat red meat, but they rarely isolate factors like lifestyle, genetics, or even the amount of carbs and sugar in the diet. It's a bit like spotting someone with an umbrella and assuming it's raining, when really it's just cloudy. The logic simply doesn't hold up when looked at more closely. Interestingly, cultures that consume nutrient-dense foods like red meat often experience fewer cases of diseases like diabetes and strokes. Yet, mainstream advice still pushes the idea that red meat is harmful. The real issue might not be the meat itself, but rather the foods that often accompany it. Think refined carbs and sugars. Imagine the classic burger meal. It's not just the meat, but also the sugary soda and fries on the side. Is it really fair to pin the blame on the meat alone? This mix-up between correlation and causation often misleads people about what's genuinely beneficial for their health. When red meat is eaten in isolation, free from the usual carb-heavy sides, it actually delivers essential nutrients that can help balance blood sugar levels. It's a bit like rereading a headline before believing the story. To fully understand the role of red meat in our diets, we need to look beyond the surface and dig into the actual science. Are you looking for more raw truths on the carnivore diet? Hit me here and subscribe for many more insights. When it comes to heart disease, there's a long-standing belief that replacing animal fats with vegetable oils is the healthier choice. However, controlled studies tell a different story. In fact, when animal fats are swapped for vegetable oils, there's often an increase in heart disease risk rather than a decrease. It's almost ironic, the very oils marketed as heart healthy might be doing the opposite. Imagine cutting out steak and butter only to find out the margarine and canola oil aren't the safe bet they seem to be. Think about it. Traditional diets that emphasize red meat and animal fats, like those followed by our ancestors, didn't come with the heart disease epidemic we see today. But as soon as processed oils took over, we saw a rise in cases. There's a hidden lesson here about sticking closer to whole foods instead of heavily processed alternatives. The notion that health improves by eliminating natural fats may just be another one of those unfounded ideas that's been passed around without much evidence. In reality, the carnivore diet, rich in animal fats and nutrients, can align better with the body's natural requirements than we're often led to believe. This shift back to whole, animal-based foods doesn't just challenge the idea that all fat is harmful, it reveals how vital these fats can be for heart health and overall well-being. The conversation about heart disease isn't as black and white as animal fat bad, vegetable oil good. There's so much more to explore here, especially when we consider how these foods interact with our bodies over time. The connection between diabetes and red meat is another widely misunderstood idea. Many assume that because red meat is calorie-dense, it must somehow affect blood sugar. But that's simply not true. Unlike high-carb foods, red meat has no impact on blood glucose levels. It's the excess of refined carbs and sugars found in bread, pasta, and sweets that are the real drivers behind rising blood sugar and insulin resistance. If you're looking to stabilize your blood sugar, adding nutrient-dense red meat to your diet might actually help you feel fuller and less likely to reach for sugary snacks. For those following a carnivore diet, results have shown that blood sugar levels can become more stable over time. This effect can be particularly useful for people managing or aiming to prevent diabetes. Consider this: while processed carbs spike blood sugar and keep you on a roller coaster of highs and lows, protein-rich red meat provides lasting energy without the crash. It's like choosing a slow-burning fuel over a quick spark. One keeps you steady, while the other fizzles out quickly. Interestingly, many who adopt a low-carb or carnivore approach report lower cravings and increased control over hunger, making it easier to avoid foods that trigger blood sugar spikes. So, instead of demonizing red meat, perhaps it's time to take a closer look at how carbs, not meat, are influencing our health. This shift in perspective opens up new ways of understanding how diet impacts conditions like diabetes. Inflammation is often linked to red meat in popular health discussions, but the real story is more complex. Studies that label red meat as inflammatory frequently overlook the carbs and sugars commonly consumed alongside it. Picture a steak dinner with a sugary dessert or a burger with a side of fries. It's not the red meat sparking the inflammation, but the carbs and sugars that come with it. The carnivore diet, by removing these inflammatory elements, actually offers a way to limit dietary triggers of inflammation. In fact, nutrient-dense foods like red meat provide essential vitamins and minerals that can help the body maintain balance and recover from daily stresses. Foods high in omega-3, S, and vitamins B12 and D, found in red meat, support a robust immune system, which is crucial for managing inflammation. Imagine swapping out processed snacks for a meal rich in protein and healthy fats. The effects can be quite transformative. That's why so many people report feeling lighter and more energized on a diet low in carbs and high in animal-based foods. There's a lot to learn here about how food impacts our bodies beyond the surface, viewing health through a new lens, one that sees beyond misleading labels, can reveal a path to wellness that's based on whole, unprocessed foods rather than heavily marketed myths. When we dig deeper into what really causes inflammation, red meat seems less like a culprit and more like a nutrient powerhouse. This reframing brings us closer to understanding how our diet truly impacts long-term wellness. Ready to beef up your knowledge on the carnivore diet? Meet me here and hit subscribe for your next bite of wisdom. The belief that red meat leads to weight gain and obesity is another misconception that deserves a second look. People often assume that meat's high calorie and fat content inevitably cause weight gain, but evidence from those on the carnivore diet shows a different story. Many individuals report weight loss and increased energy levels, even when their diet is largely centered on red meat. This challenges the idea that animal-based foods are inherently fattening and suggests that processed carbs might be the real culprit. It's easy to see why carbs often lead to overeating. They spike blood sugar, which soon crashes, leading to hunger and cravings. Red meat, on the other hand, is rich in protein and fats, which promote fullness and stabilize energy. Imagine a meal with a hearty portion of steak versus a plate of pasta. One keeps you satisfied longer, while the other might have you reaching for a snack within an hour. This feeling of sustained fullness is a big reason why people often find it easier to manage their weight on a diet based on nutrient-dense foods like red meat. This shift in understanding can be a real game changer for anyone struggling with weight management. Instead of focusing on cutting calories or following restrictive diets, adopting a meat-based approach offers a sustainable, satisfying way to nourish the body. It also breaks down the myth that health is about constant deprivation. Instead, it's about choosing foods that naturally support a balanced metabolism. Foodborne illness is often associated with red meat, yet the real risk often comes from improperly handled vegetables. When people hear about food poisoning, they tend to think of undercooked meat. But studies show that contaminated greens and produce are actually more likely to carry harmful bacteria. Think about all the recalls for leafy greens in recent years. It's a reminder that vegetables aren't always as safe as they're made out to be. By contrast, properly handled and cooked meat, especially on a carnivore diet, can be one of the safest options available. Interestingly, the meticulous processing that most red meat undergoes actually makes it less likely to harbor certain pathogens compared to raw, unwashed produce. Vegetables can pick up bacteria like E. coli from soil, water, and handling, while high cooking temperatures usually kill off any bacteria in meat. So, while it's always important to practice food safety with all types of foods, the notion that meat is the primary source of foodborne illnesses is often exaggerated. This misconception has led many to overlook the real risks present in foods typically thought of as healthy. Embracing the carnivore diet can actually simplify food safety, since most animal products are less prone to contamination when handled correctly. By understanding where these risks truly lie, people can make more informed choices about their diet and health without the fear often linked to red meat. The idea that red meat increases the risk of strokes is largely built on observational studies that lack strong evidence. These studies tend to make broad associations without examining the complex web of lifestyle factors involved, like overall diet, physical activity, and stress levels. It's a bit like assuming everyone who drinks coffee every day is at risk for heart issues, without considering all the other things they do. Without randomized trials, there's simply no concrete basis for blaming red meat alone for stroke risk. Observational data often fails to separate nutrient-dense foods from the carbs and processed items they're often served with, muddying the waters. A carnivore diet, focusing on animal-based foods, provides ample nutrients without the inflammatory sugars and processed oils that might contribute to poor cardiovascular health. Imagine a dinner of steak versus one with processed carbs and sugary sauces. One fuels the body, while the other adds hidden risks. Is it really fair to blame the steak for what the carbs might cause? Looking beyond surface-level studies allows for a deeper understanding of how food truly impacts health. When the diet centers on whole, animal-based foods, we find that concerns over stroke risk often diminish. This perspective urges us to question and rethink the common narratives around red meat, especially as we explore how diet choices interact with the body in a way that's balanced and supportive. The belief that red meat somehow harms fertility doesn't hold up against historical and nutritional evidence. For centuries, cultures around the world have relied on red meat as a staple, with no apparent negative impact on reproduction. In fact, nutrient-dense foods, especially animal-based ones, provide essential building blocks like iron, zinc, and B vitamins, all critical for fertility and hormonal balance. This makes red meat more of a support for fertility rather than a risk, as it supplies key nutrients that our ancestors thrived on. In today's age of processed foods and nutrient-depleted diets, the emphasis on whole foods like red meat becomes even more important for reproductive health. Many who adopt a carnivore diet or incorporate more animal-based foods into their meals find improvements in hormone regulation, which is vital for fertility. It's not uncommon for people struggling with fertility to notice positive changes when they shift to a diet rooted in whole, natural ingredients. Think of it like going back to basics. Giving the body what it was designed to process can make a real difference. When we look at the big picture, the nutrients from red meat offer substantial support for those aiming to maintain or improve fertility. Rather than cutting out these foods, focusing on clean, responsibly sourced meat can offer a solid foundation for health. This approach challenges the idea that animal products are a barrier to fertility, and instead promotes them as nature's intended fuel for a thriving, balanced body. Concerns over hormones and antibiotics in red meat are common, yet modern regulations ensure minimal residues in commercially sold meat. Strict standards are in place to monitor and limit these substances, meaning the red meat you find at the store is generally safe and controlled. Imagine it like quality checks in a factory. There are protocols and regulations designed to keep the product safe for consumers. The reality is, any traces that do remain are often too minuscule to have a measurable impact on human health. It's also important to remember that many of these worries stem from outdated information. Today's carnivore diet enthusiasts prioritize high-quality meat sources that follow strict animal health guidelines. When buying meat, especially from trusted sources, consumers can feel assured that they're choosing a clean, nutrient-rich option. Opting for grass-fed or organic meats is one way to further minimize exposure to any residues and align with a sustainable, high-quality food choice. Ultimately, the idea that red meat is loaded with hormones and antibiotics doesn't match the facts of modern food standards. By choosing responsible sources and understanding the regulations in place, people can confidently incorporate meat into their diet without fear of chemical residues. This understanding is a step towards a more balanced perspective on meat's role in a nutritious, health-focused lifestyle. Linking red meat to higher mortality rates is a claim based on weak evidence and overlooks stronger connections with other dietary choices, particularly the use of plant-based oils. Studies have shown that oils like those from soy and canola, which are often labeled heart-healthy, can have negative impacts on long-term health. When people replace natural fats with processed oils, they might actually be increasing their health risks instead of reducing them. So, the assumption that red meat alone leads to poor outcomes doesn't hold up when we zoom out and examine the broader dietary picture. Those who embrace a carnivore diet often find that eating whole, animal-based foods promotes well-being and supports longevity. Traditional cultures, which often had diets rich in nutrients from animal products, didn't experience the chronic diseases prevalent today. There's wisdom in their approach. By focusing on naturally sourced foods, they sidestepped many of the modern health issues linked to processed vegetable-based oils. It's a reminder that red meat might be less of a problem and more of a solution when it comes to maintaining overall vitality. Rather than fearing red meat, understanding how it fits into a balanced diet can transform our approach to food. The focus on reducing mortality rates by cutting out red meat might actually miss the mark, overlooking other impactful dietary factors. The belief that red meat lacks essential nutrients compared to plant-based superfoods couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, red meat is incredibly rich in vitamins, minerals, and high-quality protein that support overall health. Nutrients like B12, iron, and zinc, which are crucial for energy, immunity, and cognitive function, are abundantly found in red meat. Many plant foods lack these nutrients in bioavailable forms, meaning the body has a harder time absorbing and using them efficiently. Imagine it as the difference between a flashlight with fresh batteries versus one with low power. Red meat fuels the body in ways many plants simply can't. For those on a carnivore diet, the nutrient density of animal-based foods often provides a strong foundation for health, filling nutritional gaps without the need for complex supplements or extra food groups. This simplicity is powerful, as it supplies everything from amino acids to critical fats that support hormone balance and muscle repair. People looking to optimize their health can often find everything they need in a diet rich in whole nutrient-dense foods like red meat. Choosing red meat as a staple food source can therefore make a profound impact on well-being, especially for those concerned about deficiencies. Far from being an incomplete food, red meat offers a dense, well-rounded package of nutrients that naturally meet the body's needs. Replacing the idea of red meat as a filler with one that sees it as a powerhouse food opens up new possibilities for balanced, thriving health. So, now that you know the truth about red meat and the myths that have been thrown at us for years, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you keep settling for the usual misinformation? Or will you take control of your own health journey? Imagine what could change if you stopped fearing the foods that truly fuel you and started questioning the so-called healthy alternatives. Are you ready to cut through the noise and make choices that genuinely support your well-being? If this makes you think twice about what's on your plate, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Stay connected because there's so much more to uncover about what it takes to live a life of real, unfiltered health. Want to learn more about how the carnivore diet can transform your health? Check out this video and dive into the surprising ways it tackles blood sugar, inflammation, hormones, and more. Don't miss out. Click play and discover what this approach can really do for you.